Okay, great. It looks like we are all set here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and hide my video as well, just so when the recording is posted on the library website, everyone can kind of focus on the content here. Speaking of which, everyone should be able to see my screen. If you aren't able to see that, definitely let me know, and I'll kind of check into that accordingly. But again, I want to say thank you so much for having me on here today to talk a little bit about the local author and self-publishing resources that are available through your Fairfax County Public Library. Like Renee mentioned, today is the final session in a three-part series on these various kind of indie publishing resources. And if you weren't able to join us on either of the first two, there's no worries. The recordings of those sessions are already available on the Fairfax Library website. And the recording of this session will also be added there as well. So while we covered in our last section the book file creation tool Pressbooks Public, today we'll be focusing more on the Indie Author Project, which is a program that allows you to make your ebooks available to participating libraries locally, all across the state in Virginia, and potentially at participating libraries all across the US and Canada. So we'll be kind of walking through the benefits of participating in this program, how to get involved, and all the kind of various resources and programs that the Indie Author Project offers. And to start, I wanted to provide just a little bit of background on how the Indie Author Project came about. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, BiblioBoard, the team kind of behind this tool or resource, partnered with Library Journal to launch a program called Selfie, which was designed to provide self-published and independently published authors a new avenue to get their ebooks into public libraries. And that came about as a result of seeing kind of how popular self-publishing has become over recent years, and really wanting to make sure that we try to help make sure that it was as easy as possible for libraries, local authors to be able to partner with each other to introduce patrons and readers to some great locally sourced books. And the way the Indie Author Project works is we have kind of our flagship year-round discovery program, which, like I mentioned, allows independently published authors to make their ebook or ebooks available on the BiblioBoard library platform, which we'll show in just a moment here, to participating libraries all across your state or region, with the potential to have your ebook included not just locally, but also at participating libraries all across the US and Canada, if it's chosen by one of our curation partners as kind of one of the top submissions coming through to the program. And that kind of curation component there, that selection of the top submissions, is definitely a really important part of the program, which we'll again talk more about in just a moment here. But that really helps participating libraries feel confident in promoting these independently published works, knowing that they've gone through a trusted kind of curation and selection process. And of course, on the flip side, for authors, it's a nice kind of sense of validation, having your book chosen out of all these submissions by a really reputable kind of curation and review source as one of the top submissions that are coming through. And over the years, kind of the Indie Author Project has built on this year-round discovery program and added additional resources and events, kind of developed into its own little publishing community that again includes not only the year-round curation and discovery elements, but also physical events like the annual Indie Author Day, which some of you may have participated in this year at one of Fairfax's many events, but also virtual events like our annual or monthly expert sessions, and our annual regional indie book contest, which each spring seek to identify and elevate kind of the best indie books and authors in each participating region. And Virginia is one of those participating regions. So as you can see, kind of a variety of different components with the Indie Author Project, making up this really robust publishing community that's really all about trying to connect local independent authors with public libraries and readers. Here we are. Everyone should be able to see the next slide here. Sorry if that faded out for a moment there. And like I mentioned, while the Indie Author Project has kind of grown and developed over the years, that flagship or cornerstone year-round discovery program has still remained kind of the focal point of the Indie Author Project and continues to provide indie authors with a non-exclusive way to get their ebooks into participating libraries, again, locally throughout Virginia, and again, potentially in participating libraries all across the US and Canada if your ebook or ebooks are chosen as one of the best of the best of those submissions coming through. And this twofold approach to the program kind of allows libraries to be inclusive of all different types of local and indie authors, making them available in the statewide or province-wide for our Canadian libraries that are participating in those local collections, while also, again, elevating and promoting the best of these submissions in what we call our Indie Author Project Select collection. And we'll walk through the submission process in just a moment here, but I kind of wanted to make sure to make a point of what the end result looks like in terms of where your ebooks can be displayed and accessible to patrons and readers. And so for authors with this program, to get started, very straightforward to submit to the Indie Author Project. Like I mentioned before, it's also completely non-exclusive. So it does not impede you from continuing to pursue other avenues of selling, marketing, distributing your work. You still maintain total and complete ownership of any ebooks that you submit to the program, and you can request to have them removed at any given time. And for those authors who do have their book chosen by our curation partners over at Library Journal or Publishers Weekly as one of the best of the best, the submissions coming through, being invited to be included in the Indie Author Project Select collection. You also, as a result, not only have that kind of increase in exposure and potential new readership by having your book available to all participating Indie Author Project libraries, but you also then are eligible to opt in to the author royalty pool with the program, which has been a really exciting development for the Indie Author Project, since initially the Indie Author Project was developed primarily as just kind of an exposure or discovery program designed to help connect authors with new readers, not necessarily being created initially as a direct revenue generator. So the addition of the author royalty component in the past year and a half or so has been really exciting, a very exciting development to the program. And with that, again, for those authors who are chosen as Indie Author Project Select, meaning that your submission has been identified by one of our curation partners as one of the best of the best of all these titles being submitted to the program, those authors will receive an invitation to opt in to the author royalty pool, which means that they'll receive royalties partially based on the sale of these collections to libraries on various library ebook platforms like Overdrive, for example. Some people might be familiar with their Libby app. So in part based on just the general sale price, but then the other element there for the calculation of the royalties is actually based on the usage of the book itself in the collection. So it can be pretty neat to see some authors being promoted, letting their followers know that their books are available through these libraries, and then seeing their usage kind of jump up, but then of course their royalty pool jump up a little bit as well there. And one important thing to note there kind of with the royalty component is that participation in the program still remains non-exclusive as long as you have the rights to share and distribute your work. We place kind of no exclusivity or claims or anything on that whatsoever for those who are participating. It's something to keep in mind there. And now that we have kind of a general overview of the different working components of the year-round Indie Author Project Discovery Program, I wanted to go into a little more detail here in terms of how you all can get started getting involved in the program. So one of the great things about being a writer in Fairfax County is that the Fairfax County Library has a great little setup on their website presenting all of these different local author and self-publishing resources. So you can find both the Pressbooks Public tool, which we talked about in our last session, as well as the Indie Author Project, straight on the library's website. If you go into the Writers Corner page, you'll see there are the recordings of our previous sessions and some additional directions and resources. And if we go down to the Share page here, you can click right on into the Indie Author Project there, where you can go ahead and actually submit to the program. Here on this landing page, you can learn a little bit more about the Indie Author Project in general, requirements, timeline. And from there, you can go ahead and submit. The submission process, like I mentioned, is very, very straightforward, just takes a couple minutes, depending on how familiar you are with your book's metadata, or basically just the details for your book. I'll take us from the top here. Once we get started, you'll be prompted to provide just some basic personal information. Nothing too invasive there. And this contact information is just so we can contact you if there are any questions about your submission, and so we're able to notify your local library whenever a local author submits to the program. And I'll just put in some placeholder details here. And from there, once we've provided our basic personal information, you'll be prompted to actually upload your book file and your cover image if it's not already included in your book file. And as it mentions on the landing page, the Indie Author Project accepts both PDF and EPUB files, but I definitely recommend if you do have an EPUB version of your book that you upload that. The reading experience for the patrons just tends to be a bit more enjoyable with an EPUB file than a PDF. And you can go ahead and upload that here. I'll just put in a little placeholder item. And then next, you again provide some general details for your book itself, what we call metadata, so providing your book title, a brief description, category. And once you've gone through, you can even add any additional contributors. You have an editor, illustrator, translator, cover designer. Once you've gone through and filled out all those required fields and any additional ones that you might like, you're almost done with the submission process. The last step here, a very important step, is to accept the terms of agreement. And here, with these terms, like I mentioned before, you still maintain total and complete ownership of your work. You're essentially agreeing to allow the library to include the submission in the Indie Author Project collection. And most importantly, you're affirming that you have the right to the entirety of the submission of the book that you're submitting here. So in the off chance there are any future copyright infringement claims, that's kind of when that would come up. But luckily, knock on wood, we have not had any of those issues. But once you go ahead and accept the terms there, you'll go ahead and submit, at which point you'll be taken to a thank you page where you'll be invited to submit an additional work if you have one. If not, you're actually all done. And at that point, you'll also receive a confirmation email from the Indie Author Project team, letting you know that we've received your submission, providing you with a little timeline on when to expect future updates, as well as our contact information. So you can reach out directly if you have any questions at all about the status of your submission, if you'd like to update your book file, covers, metadata, what have you. You'll have our contact information right from the get-go there. And then at that point, once we've received your submission, nothing goes live automatically. There is still kind of an initial vetting, kind of quality control step there. And with that, we're just double checking that any submission is technically sound, meaning we're making sure that it's a complete literary work. Someone didn't accidentally grab the wrong file off their computer. There are no broken links, upside down pages, things like that. And once everything kind of looks okay in that initial vetting, the submission will then be added to the author's local indie collection on BiblioBoard Library. So in this case, that would be the Indie Virginia collection that we see here. And this features all of the submissions from authors within the state of Virginia who have submitted their ebooks to the Indie Author Project. And these are available to participating libraries all across the state, of course, including Fairfax County. So right off the bat, there's kind of a nice initial increase in potential new readership and exposure just by being included in that local kind of statewide indie author archive here. And once your book is added to the Indie Virginia collection, you'll receive another email from our team letting you know that your book is live, providing you with a link to the book on BiblioBoard, and a handful of kind of tips and tricks, recommended best practices on how to get the most out of your participation in the program. Over here on Fairfax's BiblioBoard Library homepage, you can even see some of the featured authors that they have included in the Indie Author Project. And from there, once your book has been added to your local indie collection on BiblioBoard, that's when it enters that more competitive or curated aspect of the program with the Indie Author Project select collections that I've mentioned a little bit here. And with that, like I said before, all of our submissions kind of on a year-round basis, after they've been added to the author's respective local indie collection, they're then passed along to our curation partners, who in turn do their much more kind of in-depth vetting and selection process, where they're looking to identify the best of the best of all these submissions that are coming through. And those titles that are identified as being really high quality indie reads are added to the Indie Author Project select collections, in addition to still being available in their local collection. But again, these Indie Author Project Select curated collections are available not just locally, but at participating libraries all across the US and Canada. And that includes multiple states where the entire state has access to these collections, which again, definitely provides kind of an increase in potential new readership and exposure, really in that kind of library sphere. And not only can patrons discover a new indie author through these collections, but they can also, for example, let's say I found this author, Craig Moody. I've decided I love this book that I read through the library, and I'd like to go ahead and find more works by this author. He included the link to be able to actually purchase his book in print here from his preferred digital marketplace. Other authors will include their author website there instead, or their Amazon page, their Goodreads page, just to encourage readers who have discovered these authors to be able to go forth and find more books by them, and also be able to purchase the books as well, in addition to borrowing them from the library. And to do that, to include a link to your preferred marketplace or author website, there's just a very clear little field in the submission process that you can put your link in. So nothing too complicated there at all. And beyond that, for these Indie Author Project Select authors, those who have gone through that curation process and have been identified as the best of the best, like we touched upon earlier, they're also then invited to participate in the royalty component of the Indie Author Project program. And if anyone on the line here has already submitted to the Indie Author Project or has any questions about kind of that submission process or the royalty component, just like Renee mentioned in the chat box there, definitely please share any questions at all or any aspects that I might be able to share a little bit more detail on or shed a little bit more light on here. We definitely want to make sure you have all the information that you need to feel comfortable jumping right on in and getting involved with the Indie Author Project. And while I give everyone a moment to add any questions there, we can kind of continue on to some of the other resources and events that are part of the greater kind of Indie Author Project community. Like I mentioned at the beginning, over the years, we've kind of built off of that flagship year-round discovery program and incorporated some additional in-person events, marketing and promotional opportunities, virtual resources, and continue to add more partners and resources kind of as we go forward as well. One of these additional kind of elements is the Virginia Author Project contest, which, like I mentioned at the beginning, each spring, the Indie Author Project hosts regional contests in different states and provinces, looking to identify the best of the best of indie published ebooks in that particular state or province. It's free to submit, and just like the year-round discovery program, submitting to the contest, you still maintain total ownership of your work. There's a nice monetary prize for those winners, as well as a variety of different marketing and promotional opportunities as well. The winners of this year's contest were announced 2 weeks ago or so, back on Indie Author Day, and our adult fiction winner for Virginia is actually from Fairfax County. Nice little home element there. And the next contest launches on April 1st of 2022. And we'll kind of start again from there. And beyond these contests, which again launch every spring, when they start accepting submissions. Beyond that context, we also have a virtual webinar series that we launched, I think probably about a year and a half ago, just around the beginning of the pandemic. We wanted to make sure that we were still able to connect with all these different participants in the Indie Author Project community. So that's how these Indie Author Project expert sessions came about. And this is our free monthly webinar series where we feature a different award-winning indie author or industry expert who presents on a different topic on either the business or craft of being an indie author. And as you can see here, presenters for these sessions are paid. However, attendance for other authors is completely free and open to the public. And we've had some really wonderful presenters so far on a very wide variety of different topics, everything from overcoming writer's block to hosting successful virtual book events. Again, a wide variety of different subject matter and a lot of insight and kind of expertise being shared on these. And one of the nice things with these Indie Author Project expert session events is that if you're unable to view the event or attend live, it's no problem at all. We make the recordings of all of these sessions available for public viewing over on our Indie Author Project website. In the virtual programming section, you'll see there's an archive tab. And with that, you can browse through the recordings and details of all of the previous sessions. So a really wonderful resource that's readily available there. And for anyone on here who might be interested in presenting an Indie Author Project expert session, I'll be sure to toss this request form in our chat box here, in case anyone would be interested in that. But beyond those monthly virtual events with the Indie Author Project expert session, another kind of exciting event that's part of the Indie Author Project community is our annual Indie Author Day celebration, which, like I mentioned before, many of you may have participated in some of Fairfax's variety of wonderful events that they hosted this year during their week-long Indie Author celebration. And with Indie Author Day, essentially every year in November, during National Novel Writing Month, we invite libraries, organizations, community centers all over the US and Canada to host events, whether they're in person or virtual, really just all centered around celebrating their community of local authors, including things like live author panels, open mics, book readings, signings, book sales, really encouraging all the different local events to kind of make it their own. And then we also have a whole day of virtual programming on Indie Author Day that is, again, available to any participants all across, again, the US and Canada there. So as I mentioned, and as you can kind of see, there's definitely a variety of different ways to get involved with the Indie Author Project, whether it's by submitting your ebook and participating in that year-round discovery program, or submitting to the upcoming contest this coming spring, attending an expert session or Indie Author Day, all kinds of different ways to get involved. But overall, one thing I definitely want to make sure to kind of drive home about the Indie Author Project in general is that the goal really is to just connect indie authors, libraries, and readers, trying to bring patrons to these wonderful, locally sourced and independently published books that otherwise can often be sometimes difficult to find. So as you're looking over all of everything we went over here this evening, if you're browsing through the Indie Author Project website later on, any questions at all that do come up, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. Our team is always available to answer any questions you may have, go over any ideas you might have in mind for ways to partner, different events to get involved in. That's kind of what the Indie Author Project team is here for. And I know this session's a little different than our last session on the Pressbooks tool, which is a bit more kind of hands-on, whereas the Indie Author Project, once you go ahead and submit or attend, it's kind of hands-free participation for this program. But if there are any questions at all here at the moment about the different Indie Author Project components that we went over, please definitely share them in the chat box there. I'll be happy to revisit anything that we went over here tonight. And Renee, I'll also ask you, was there anything that you wanted to add here, anything that I might have overlooked in terms of the Fairfax website?
No, and thank you so much for sharing the website. It's a work in progress. So hopefully we will add more information to it. I would encourage everyone to bookmark this link and check it regularly. Definitely.
I mean, how much it's come together. I think this is an awesome resource there on the website. And like we talked about at the beginning, the recordings of the past 2 sessions are already up there. And the recording of this evening's session should be added as well. So in case you want to revisit any of those. But otherwise, at the moment, I'm not seeing any questions come through here. As you can see on this last slide, you can, and as I mentioned before, you can visit the indieauthorproject.com for any kind of updates, and news on the program, any new offerings that we have going on. You can also follow us on social media if you see there. But if there are no other questions or anything here at the moment, I did want to say thank you again so much for taking the time this evening, letting me chat with you a little bit about these awesome indie publishing resources that are available through the library. But otherwise, if there are no questions here, Renee, I can pass it on back over to you.